Roseland is one of our small communities, and they have made Indian River County special, and they still do. It's tucked away in the northeast corner of the county with the St. Sebastian River on the north and the Indian River Lagoon on the east. It was part of one of the last land grants given by Spain in Spanish Florida. That was called the Fleming Grant, all 20,000 acres of virgin wilderness. It was given to Captain George Fleming, an Irishman, for his service to the Spanish government. When Florida was ceded to the United States in 1821, the United States honored this land grant. And from the research that we have done, the Fleming family never lived on this beautiful property, but over the decades of the 1800s, the Seminole Indians wandered through this area and the early settlers settled on this property. One of these early settlers was Dempsey Kane, who settled on the north side of the Sebastian Creek. That was the name the river was called by the fishermen and the farmers. He is also credited with naming the south side of the creek Roseland, and immediately began encouraging settlements. By the late 1800s, Roseland had a post office, a railroad depot with a water tower, and was platted for schools, parks, and churches. Steamboats in the Indian River even stopped at the docks, and tourists sailed up the creek for fishing and camping. During Florida's Roaring Twenties, there was also grandeur plans made for land development, but that never happened. What did happen was a quiet, peaceful little community growing up along the Sebastian Creek. Roseland attracted a general store, winter tourists, naturalists studying the flora and fauna of the St. Johns, and even a small but unique artist colony. The people of Roseland would not only contribute to their community, but to the rich history of Indian River County. Most of that history was quiet and peaceful, but some was not. Here we go, Roseland, in your own words. Glenn Powell is owner of the Goodrich Estates on the banks of the Sebastian Creek. And Glenn can tell us of the heyday of Roseland as a winter tourist community and of the islands that was given as conservation lands.
I live here in Roseland on Bay Street at the original Goodrich Estate, which was built in the 1920s. And we sort of stumbled upon it in 2002. I lived in Atlanta, and we were visiting good friends of ours. We were driving down Bay Street, and I see the river, and we're on this sandy road, and then we pull into this property that was unlike anything I'd seen before. I moved the vertical blinds away from the slider, and I saw this blue pool behind it. And I walked down the steps, and I saw this huge pool with line fountains in each corner and this very mature bamboo swaying. And I said, oh my God, they don't make this anymore. To the right is the St. Sebastian River, and this huge yard going down it. It's like, oh my God. And it was one of these life-changing moments. And I said, I have to have this. It was owned by a family named Goodrich from Wethersfield, Connecticut. And Mr. Goodrich was a streetcar and steamship and railroad tycoon. And Mr. Goodrich was instrumental in bringing electricity to the area, which was the big thing back then in the 1920s. So when I saw the property in 2002, I fell in love with it, and what drew me to it is just this sense of history. And even though all of the property was in disrepair, I knew that there was a story there, and I felt that it had to be preserved for the next generation. I think a lot of Florida has been populated by people who are drawn to the appeal of old Florida, but they just tear everything down, and then they put in the house, and they put in the 3 queen palms and the crotons, and then they build this, beautiful new house, but it doesn't have the charm of old Florida, which really can't be duplicated. And in these nice new houses, they have pictures of all these old Florida cracker houses, and we wanted to keep the old Florida cracker house and make sure that these things endure. We have visitors to the property, and they're just taken back in time to how things used to be.
The city of Fellsmere's historian, Rich Fatatka, will relate the story of the notorious Ashley gang that was killed at the Sebastian Creek Bridge and how that tragedy caused all sorts of things to happen, including a new county called Indian River.
Let me inform you about the Ashley Gang. John Ashley, the ringleader of the gang, first murdered a man, attempted to rob a train, robbed several banks, made several jail and prison escapes, and had several shootouts with law enforcement. Bootleg moonshine, became a rum runner, acted as a modern-day pirate, and had a hideout in the Everglades. He did all this while maintaining close family ties, helping less fortunate people along the way, and managing a love affair with a woman named Laura Upthegrove. On February 26, 1915, John, his brother Bob, and Kid Lowe robbed the Bank of Stewart, netting $4,500. From that day forward, John and his friends would be known as the Ashley Gang. According to the locals, the gang was not all bad. There was some redeeming social value. It has been said the gang left money under a brick for a poor, ill individual. They left groceries for a widow, and they spared the life of a deputy sent to hunt them down when he begged them not to shoot. On November 1st, 1924, Sheriff Baker received a tip revealing that the Ashley Gang was on the move and would be traveling up Dixie Highway to Jacksonville. Sheriff Baker knew the gang had to travel over the long wooden bridge over the St. Sebastian River between Roseland and Minko. The St. Sebastian River Bridge lay 28 miles to the north of Fort Pierce. An hour after the chain had been placed on the bridge, when John Ashley and the gang arrived at the bridge, they had no choice but to stop. Immediately, the deputies came out of the bushes and descended upon the car. Inside were John Ashley, age 36, his nephew, Hadford Robley, age 18, Ray Lynn, age unknown, and Clarence Middleton, age 25. The deputies ordered the gang out of the car. Each gang member had a rifle and holstered revolver at their sides. Supposedly, the deputies disarmed and handcuffed the 4 gang members, but whatever happened, history records that all 4 were shot and killed that night on the bridge. The next time you drive north on U.S. Highway 1 in Indian River County, when you come to the north end of Indian River Drive at U.S. 1, to the right, you will see Moore's Point historical marker. It only takes a minute to read and realize that on the night of November 1st, 1924, the most notorious gang of criminals ever to terrorize the Treasure Coast, the Ashley Gang, was snuffed out of existence forever on a wooden bridge over the St. Sebastian River just north of Roseland.
We have with us the president of the Sebastian Area Historical Society, Patrick Morgan, who will talk about education, for the lack thereof, in this rural county of Florida. He could tell us about the teachers and their influence not only on their students, but on their communities.
My 4th grade teacher, Miss Henshaw, I think her first name was Granite. She came here at Roseland when she was 5 years old and got in the car, and she was sleepy because she had rode a train from all the way up north, and her dad got her out and put her over his shoulder and was walking her into the house when they arrived. And she looked up and said, "Papa, I thought we were not going to have to deal with snow anymore, and it's everywhere." And he laughed. He said, "Sweetie, that's not snow." And so the next morning he took her outside and showed her it was sand. Because back in the day here, all that was around here was white sand, and it was called sugar sand. And so she always liked to tell that story, and it was one of my favorite ones about her. The education here 100 years ago, I'm sure, was taught mostly by the family, maybe the preacher, as they call them in the South, or relatives that knew, plus just going out and being working. That was a lot of education and learning from your parents.
David Holzclaw of the Holzclaw family talks about their general store and its impact on Roseland and in the surrounding area. David can also talk about the indentured prisoners of Roseland that worked in the turpentine industry west of Sebastian Creek, now the St. Sebastian Buffer Preserve.
My grandparents operated a store here prior to 1900. It was in a 2-story building. It was on this piece of property that burned down prior to 1902 or 3. And my granddad built this house, I believe, sometime prior to 1920. The store was the hub of downtown Roseland. It was the only grocery store here. So this is where you came for kerosene for your kerosene lamps, fresh bread that was delivered every day into the bread box outside the double front doors. It was a great time to grow up. We had the river to play in. I had my cousins who lived right next door. That was pretty much life growing up in downtown Roseland back in the big 50s and late 40s. But by the 60s, all the kids had grown up and had driver's licenses and access to cars. And so the action moved to Vero, and it was a great place to grow up. You couldn't ask for better. You didn't have to lock anything up. Everything was pretty much safe where you left it. Sugarcane industry was focused on Fellsmere. Over here along the railroad tracks, there was a coaling station, a water tank, and an indentured prisoners farm, where the unlucky souls got chained up at night. During the day, they were let out with supervisors to go into the piney woods and dodge rattlesnakes and cut longleaf pines to draw turpentine from the pine sap, the same way people up north draw maple syrup.
Richard Thomas of the fishing family of Sebastian is going to tell us stories of Roseland, Sebastian Creek, and visiting that general store.
One day in 1947, a man out here, and I don't know who he was, called my grandfather, but I heard my grandfather, he says, "They're telling me there's one of them in Roseland?" And he says, "Yes, sir." He says, "All right, kids, get on the back of the truck." There's a Seminole Indian out at Hostcall's grocery store, they call it. And so we piled on, we came out here, looked over, and there's this Seminole Indian sitting there with all that nice little Indian gear they wear, with a real long rifle, and he's standing there. And the reason we knew all about the store was they had kerosene. Now the rest of the places didn't. So we came out here to buy kerosene for our lanterns for fishing. The thing about it when I was growing up, there's 3 jobs you could do. One was carpenter work, usually with your dad. One was working in groves, picking fruit. And one was commercial fishing with your dad. I've got a boat right now today at my garage that was built for me in 1856. And it's perfect condition.
Jeanette Long Thompson gives us memories of growing up in rural Roseland and on the Sebastian Creek. Life as a child and a teenager with dirt roads, lots of fishing spots, and no telephone or cell phones was something to be endured.
Our family moved here in 1945. I was 2 years old, and we lived right here next door to the store. We used to have a little dirt path that we would run to the store and get us an ice cream or a candy or whatever we needed from Joy and Ralph Postball. When we were kids, we used to roller skate on this road, but a quiet little town that I wouldn't take anything from growing up here. It was, if these kids today only knew what living really was, they don't. They have no idea. If they don't have a cell phone in their hand, they're not happy. We didn't have a cell phone. We didn't even have a landline for years. And when we did get one, it was a 4-party line, and you had to wait your turn to get on it. It was fabulous to grow up here. And I still live here.
We hope you have enjoyed this history of Little Roseland. It may be little, but it made a big impact on Indian River County. So it is worth your time to take another ride up to the shores of Sebastian Creek and see one of Indian River County's special places.